Welcome again, ladies and gentlemen. This is Monday, the 25th of January 2021, and here we are again on the debate. And today we are having a very interesting topic, which is teaming up with the very first conversation that we had already on agriculture. And the topic for today is cassava production, value chain integration, and fortification for food security in Africa. Cassava production, value chain integration, and certification for food security in Africa. I am your humble host, Mbolifor and I will be in the studio with Professor Ruben Ajolu Alabi that will be introducing into the studio. He's already there with me. We are working with Aspiration 1 of the Agenda 2063, which is a prosperous Africa based on inclusive growth and sustainable development. And we have chosen to come up with agriculture because Goal 1 talks about a high standard of living, quality of life, and well being for all citizens. And 2 is talk about well educated citizens and skill revolution underpinned by science, technology, and innovation. And so we are specifically on agriculture, we know that everybody eats, everybody feeds, and so with agriculture, we can ensure quality life and well-being for African citizens. And I said already that this is skewing in from two topics already that we had. The very first one was agricultural financial strategies that promote agricultural productivity in Africa, of course. And the second was financial inclusion and agricultural production frontiers in Africa. And we know that in Africa, the diffusion of cassava can be described as a self-spreading innovation, and that cassava was introduced in Africa by Portuguese traders from Brazil in the 16th century. It was initially adopted as a famine reserve food or crop, and cassava replaces millet, banana, yams for its value as a reliable source of food in times of hunger. Africa therefore accounts about half of the world's cassava production, with over 40 African countries involved in cassava production. Cassava as a crop, therefore, has an advantage of its ability to withstand adverse conditions like drought. However, its production has been neglected for reasons like inferior crop, uncompetitivity of the crop, as well as low calorie values for this food. The goal, therefore, for this presentation today is to analyze cassava production, its values in curbing food insecurity, and its fortification for food security. I welcome Professor Ruben Ajolu Alabi, who will again be thrilling us with valid and first-hand information on cassava production. And Professor, welcome again to studio. You're always so faithful and being there on time with me. We are going to be talking today on cassava production, value chain integration, and fortification for food security in Africa. Professor, you're welcome to the Some Point Global TV. This is your space. This is your platform. Good evening, Professor.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Moderator. Just like you have said, we want to talk on a product that Africa has a comparative advantage. And we'll see how the production trend, we'll look at the production trend, then we'll see how the value can be added along the value chain line. And then we'll try to link that one with food security in Africa. As many of us may be already aware that cassava is a woody crop with an edible root. It can be grown in tropical and subtropical areas of the world. Our moderator has told us the origin of cassava, how it got to Congo Basin, and how it has become a popular crop in Africa. Actually, about 300 million Africans depend on cassava products. The cassava has a lot of carbohydrates. It is rich in calcium and essential mineral material. Now, one thing that is very important that we need to take note is that cassava can easily be integrated into farming system in Africa. For example, it can be intercropped with other crops like maize, like beans, and all that. Then I want to put it on record that the energy from cassava doubles that of the wheat and rice. It has a very highly carbohydrate uh, crop. The energy we can get from cassava doubles that of the wheat and rice. And for example, in Nigeria, the consumption of cassava is about 600 grams, more than half kilogram of cassava per capita per person. Then the disadvantage is that cassava is highly perishable crop, so it has to be processed immediately after the harvest. Then the good news is that the cost of production is very low. In fact, when cost of production of cassava is compared with that of maize, it is about 21% less than the cost of productions of popular maize in Africa. And the crop has a high potential poverty reduction. Now, the cassava product, as we are going to see along the line, and its byproduct has a very wide array of uses. You can use it industrially and domestically. And as I've said, it's one of the most important food crops in Africa. Another good thing is that it can easily be adapted to climate change. We are talking about climate reductions, climate manipulation, climate, to bring down the climate to bring down the temperature to the appropriate level. But we should be thinking of a crop like this that can easily adapt to the climate change. That is why it's possible to plant cassava in most of the crops, in most of the soil in Africa, even with minimal supply of water. So as I've said before, it's suitable to the farming and food system in Africa. It has ability to reduce food insecurity. Then the good news is that 60% of global cassava production takes place in Africa. Nigeria alone produces more than 20% of cassava, and I can demonstrate on this graph the contribution of cassava to food supply, especially in Nigeria, and it's a picture of other countries in Africa too. Like 33% total food supply in Nigeria comes from cassava alone, and which is higher than any other crop. Then I try to paint a picture of cassava production in major cassava growing countries. And Nigeria alone produces about 55 million tons of cassava in 2014, while Ghana produces about 17 million. Thailand produces about 30 million. Indonesia produces about 23 million. So these are the major cassava growing countries in the world. But we need to take note that cassava yield in Africa, in African countries, is less than some of the other partners, some of the other cassava growing countries. Like the yield in Nigeria is about 10,000 tons per hectare, whereas in Thailand is about 20,000 per hectare. So meaning that you can get the double of what you are getting from an hectare of land in Nigeria in Thailand. And that's another area where we need improvement. Now, one thing that is, there's another paradox here, just like we established last week, that there's a paradox. We have abundant land and abundant youth, but they don't connect. And there is high level of unemployment. Likewise, in Africa, we produce a lot of cassava, but we export the least of the cassava that's being produced. Like Nigeria, Ghana, Angola produce about 43% of global cassava, and they have no record of global dry cassava exports. So it's only Ghana that was able to export less than 200,000, no, less than even 2,000 tons of starch of cassava during the period under investigation, less than 2,000 tons of starch, but they don't have any record of dry cassava export. Whereas Thailand Vietnam and Indonesia produce only 23% of total cassava production, only 23%, and they exported about 96% of global dry cassava, and then 93% of global starch. They exported about 93% of global starch. So what we are trying to establish here is that Africa produces a lot of cassava and they exported the least. So it means that 93% of about $8 billion US accrued to cassava exports, cassava starch exports globally went only to Thailand and Vietnam. Another major problem in cassava production in Africa is the high losses along the value chain. Like for example, 23% and 30% of global loss in cassava value chain comes from Nigeria and Ghana alone. So these losses could have been converted to exportable products. So, and to do that, we need to improve the quality along the value chain. For example, the EU has allocated a quota of 143,000 tons of dry root cassava per year to World Trade Organization. And this quota has never been reached. And this is the area where we should be thinking about. The quota is there. Okay, bring your dry cassava to WTO for trade and to be exported to European countries, but this has not been done. And this is part of the information we are trying to bring to this platform so that people will be aware that there is that gap, there is that supply network, there is that market for this cassava product that needs to get to the appropriate quotas. I just illustrated in table 1 with some of those things I've said. Like Thailand got about $8 billion US from the export of dry cassava, whereas Nigeria did not export any dry cassava within the same period under investigation. As I've said before, there are many products from cassava. Domestically, we are aware of gari, fufu, akpu, and then cassava leaves. Cassava is a vegetable. For example, in Nigeria, I didn't know that many of our cassava leaves we either throw it away or the animal consume it. It was when I got to Germany, I visited a friend from Congo, and we ate this vegetable. It was after the now told us that vegetable was prepared from cassava leaves. I was really surprised. Although I've read it before that cassava leaves has a lot of vitamins, has a lot of protein that is not even inside the cassava itself, cassava tuber. And so we can see that cassava has a lot of product. Every part of cassava is useful. The leaves is useful. The stem, you can use it to cultivate another cassava. And then the root itself is a product that we can generate ethanol industrially. We can generate chips. We can generate straws from it. Then there's high quality cassava flour. There's starch, as I've said. Then animal feed. So this is a product that has many uses and applications. Then we need to know where is the problem. There, as I've said, the major problem is the losses along the value chain. And then we try to investigate where does these losses occur most along the value chain. For example, for people that are from the farmer's perspective, most of the losses occur during harvest when they are trying to pull the cassava out of the ground. Some of them break, some of them get lost. So we need to target that harvest period, that chain, that weak part of the chain. That during the harvest we have to make sure that we do something to reduce that losses, and how this can be mechanized to help the farmer to harvest their cassava without incurring these great losses along that line. Another thing we investigated is to find out when they are producing starch or gari, where do they incur most of the losses. We discovered that during processing of gari, that is where you have the high amount of losses of these products. And then during the storage of starch. So then during the storage of gari, those are the points along the value chain that we need to target during the planting, during the harvesting, during the processing of the starch, and during the storage of the starch, during the storage of gari. So along those value chain, these are the area where you have most of the losses. And then if you want to improve the value chain, we need to make sure that we target those weak points. Now there is a problem. There are problems in cassava value chain. One of them is the problem of information. And just like I gave the example of myself, that I didn't know that cassava vegetable and cassava leaves can serve as a vegetable. So there's a lot of information along the value chain. Then there is still problem of pests and diseases. Then the extension services is very inefficient and ineffective, not only for cassava, but for most of the crops grown in Africa. Then I'll talk about the perishability of cassava itself after harvest. Everybody is aware of inadequate infrastructures, and then uneven size of cassava tuber make the mechanizations of peeling difficult, because that's another problem. The farmer complained that peeling takes a lot of time. Then this can be mechanized, but the problem is that when you grow cassava, there are different sizes. So to mechanize the peeling process is a bit challenging. Then the value chain actors, they do not coordinate, and it's because there is no information. There's information gap between them, so there is a improper coordinations of the activities. Then there's a poorly coordinated government policies. The policy is inconsistent. There was a time the government will say, okay, you cannot you can export your cassava. Another government will come and they will say you cannot export your cassava. So that inconsistency is a big problem. When I was in university, there was this professor that went to farming, and then the government said you cannot you can be exporting your yam. So he went to get a big land and he planted yam. Before the yam is due for harvest, there's another policy that came that said that you cannot export your yam. So this inconsistency in policy is a very big problem in Africa. The lack of standardizations and grading system. So that affect the quality control. But one of the complaints is that maybe the starch from Africa is not as good as the one from Thailand. And if you don't standardize at home, when you take it out, you may not be able to get the market. So that quality control is very weak, and that's the area where we should be thinking of how to improve along the value chain. Then the loans for inputs or technological advancements are difficult to obtain. I just want to give an example of Nigeria on the effort the government are making to improve the cassava productions, productivity, and the quality, and the uses. And because, as I've said, Nigeria produce large quantity of cassava, but instead of consuming most of our cassava, instead of concentrating on that cassava, we are thinking of bringing wheat. They are making trial on how they can grow wheat in Nigeria, which the temperature, the climate is not friendly. So instead of doing that, why can't you concentrate on your cassava and do it very well, where you have a comparative advantage? Then you sell your cassava, then you can use the money to buy wheat. Now, the government in Nigeria was a time to make it mandatory that you have to include 10% of cassava flour in bread. They have discovered that the cassava flour, it has equal, almost the same amount of usability like flour. And Nigeria imports a large quantity of wheat flour every year. And then not only that, that is a drain to our foreign exchange. So the government discovered that, okay, to reduce the amount of money we are spending on foreign exchange, to improve the use of our product that we are growing, in your flour, in your bread, you must include 10% of cassava flour. Then at the same time, they implemented zero import duty on cassava processing machines or equipment. Then there is implementation of 65 and 15% levy on wheat flour and wheat grain. The essence of this is to discourage importations of wheat so that people can use part of the cassava flour that we are producing. Then They now gave incentive to bakers that if you can attain 40% blending of your cassava flour in your bread, you'll be given a corporate tax incentive of 12% rebate. So that is tax incentive that they will reduce your tax if you can use as much cassava flour as possible. And then there was a prohibitions of cassava flour importation so as to further support the program. Now, the final thing I want to talk about is on the food security implication of cassava growing. Now, cassava is very high in energy, calcium, and minerals, as we have said. But the challenge is that it's very, very low in iron and vitamin. So there is a research going on to now fortify cassava with ions and vitamins. So if that is done, because people consume a lot of cassava in Africa, so they discovered that if you consume cassava, then because it's already fortified with iron and vitamins, so you will have enough enough energy, which is resident in cassava. Then the iron is already included, and vitamins using by fortification program. So that is the level of knowledge now, and they have discovered that it is well accepted. The fortified cassava is well accepted in Africa, and when our people consume that cassava, they will have a lot of energy, then vitamins and iron. The negative thing people have against cassava is that it has cyanide, but the truth is that during processing, those cyanides are completely gone. By the time you process it, you ferment it, you grind it, you ferment it, experience has shown that those cyanides are completely gone. Not only that, there are breeding process where they produce cassava that does not have toxic level of cyanide. So that is where we are now. In conclusion, I've been able to say that Africa produces a lot of cassava, but most of this cassava are being wasted along the value chain. And we have identified those stages where these losses occur mostly during harvesting, during processing of starch, during processing of gari, and during the storage. Then we said that I've said that most of this cassava is not being exported because of the low quality of the cassava product. And that is because there is little or nothing done along the value chain to improve the quality of these cassava products. So, improvement of cassava processing and utilization techniques will greatly increase labor efficiency, income, and living standard of cassava farmer in Africa. So, if we improve the quality of our cassava, if we work upon our value chain, we are going to have cassava that is the shelf life will be longer, because that's one of the problems I told you that after 72 hours, this cassava start to deteriorate. So if we don't process this on time, they are going to have some losses. But if there is a value addition along the value chain, then that will increase the shelf life of this product, and then it will increase the income of the farmer. Then we can be sure of food security in our in Africa. Thank you very much. So let me stop here so that we can take some questions.
Thank you so much, Professor, for that a very brilliant presentation. I would like to say that you were so clear, straight to the point, and we can see how cassava is part of us, but neglected so much to the background. I would like us to have the jingle so that Professor can catch his breath. Then we come back now for appraisals, analysis, and questions that we may have. Can we have our jingle? welcome back. Cassava, a perennial crop, doubling the energy of wheat and rice, highly perishable, low cost of production, high potential of poverty reduction, adapts properly to climate change, and can be intercrop. So many advantages about cassava that you listed there, and we are asking ourselves what is happening that cassava is not on the shelves. And Professor, let me take this. So before I go ahead, we are told that if you want to be rich, get into farming business. If you want to develop, eat what you consume what you produce, and produce what you consume. And again, if you want the African continent to develop, join the debate, of course, because it's in the debate that will give you the in and out of the things that happen around, and will give you information. This year, we have opted for training sessions to make Africa great. Professor, let me begin with this first worry. Africa, excuse me, is a continent in crisis, racked with hunger, poverty, fast-growing population, fragile natural resource basis, and weakest set of agricultural resource and extension institutions. And the question I ask, with all the riches that Africa is endowed with, why Africa? With all this belittling terminologies, all this hard terminology that is showing that Africa is poor. And when I got to present, just Nigeria alone produced more than 20% of world's cassava. Isn't Africa rich? What a paradox when we talk about Africa again being in crisis situation, food insecurity again, when we are getting the details and the statistics that you just presented, Professor.
I think we still have to, it's education. Education in the sense that you concentrate only where you have comparative advantage. And that's what developed country does. What Germany cannot produce well, they will take it from Netherlands. So they will not try to concentrate, okay, we have to be producing this thing by I give you the example of Nigeria. The cassava is highly produced, 55 million tons, 55 million tons in a year. So instead of Nigeria to concentrate on that cassava, how to improve it, how to make it exportable, how to improve the quality, what they were now trying to do is they want to produce wheat. So they have to spend a lot of money experimenting with wheat, and the climate is not conducive for wheat production.
Mm.
So why don't you concentrate on what you know how to do best, and then they'll come and buy from you, and then you can use that money to buy what you need from them. That's the law of comparative advantage. And I feel that that's the way God created it. God created the whole world. There is no country that has everything. So what you have, work on it, concentrate on it, do it very well, then you market it. So but instead of us to do that, maybe for political reasons or for I don't know why you now have to concentrate on the product where you don't have comparative advantage. And then you are spending a lot of money on that. So another thing with cassava is that some people think that it's a poor man food. You know, it's not like wheat, it's not like rice, it's not even as popular as maize. But God has endowed you with this. Stay with it, work on it, improve it. Then you'll be known that. Even as individual, where you are there, everybody has his own talent. Work upon your talent, improve your talent, then you'll be marketable. But Africa, we need that kind of education to look inward, and don't compare yourself with other countries. Every country has its own comparative advantage. Concentrate on that where you have advantage, work upon it, improve on it. If you order money, we are trying to experiment with wheat. If you put it on cassava processing, cassava products, just like I said, Thailand, 8 billion US dollar from cassava. And Thailand is producing just 50% of what Nigeria alone is producing. So why are they getting that 8 billion? So we can do that. Say, okay, we want to study what are they doing that we are not doing. So Thailand will not be worried itself about it. They just concentrate on that product and then they're exporting to other countries. I told you that even the European Union, the World Trade Organization gave Africa that 143,000 tons of dry cassava to be brought to Europe. No country is thinking about that, or maybe they are not even aware in Africa. So I think the level of education we need to share this, and that's why I'm very happy to be part of this kind of education that is going on. And these have to get to our policymaker. This information we have to get to them, and before you know, somebody will be thinking along this line.
Thank you so much. You say we should concentrate our resources in what we are already producing so that we can improve and equally produce it in a large quantity. And we say that cassava adapts very well to many climates, can be intercropped, and we are seeing that Africa is producing already quite a large volume quantity of cassava. But we still don't find cassava on our shelves in supermarkets, in the feeding chain, even in Africa. Cassava, like you said, people would think that is a poor man's food. But I bet you in the 80s, the poor people, like you said, could buy Gary, for example, for 200 francs, and a family of six will be able to feed on that Gary with okra, maybe for 50 francs. But nowadays, it is the rich that can afford cassava. What a paradox, Professor, that we have so much cassava in our country, in our continent, and cassava is so inconspicuous, almost not found on our shelves in the biggest supermarkets. What do you have to say about this type of situation?
As we have said, the orientation is very important. I was just thinking that I think in Africa we should have Ministry of orientation that will this kind of information that they will tell people. Then another thing is that over the year, people have formed taste. I tell you that carbohydrate is carbohydrate. Carbohydrate inside the maize, the carbohydrate inside the rice is the same carbohydrate inside the cassava. But because people have formed taste for imported rice, so they must take that imported rice with very expensive imported amount of money. You know, imported product is more expensive, but it's the same carbohydrate. When it gets to your system, it will be broken down into glucose and to the same thing. So you will not recognize that, okay, this is the carbohydrate from rice, this is carbohydrate from cassava. It's the same carbohydrate. But what we need to do is that there should be a lot of orientation going on in our country that, okay, this is the knowledge, this is the information, this is what we're supposed to be doing. And over the year, I mean, over sometimes we now, that taste will change. That taste will change. Like local rice is even more proteinous, is more, you know, it is more nutritionally better than imported rice. But do you know that people will do everything, even when they close the border, to make sure that they smuggle imported rice? And that imported rice has even expired. So what they do is that they just rebag it, but people will say that is what they want. So, but the local one is even more beneficial to them, but they are not ready to take that because they are formed taste for these imported ones. So that's why the orientation have to go on. And just like you said, even when you get to our shelf, you discover that some of these products are not on our shelf. So that's why the processing comes in. Even the little one, you can start in a little way, we process this thing, and then we'll be able to sell it to our local markets. I went to Nigeria where there's what they call ShopRite. On the ShopRite market, the biscuit is from Europe, chocolate is from on their shelf. So, you just discover that, as we have said before, we are not consuming what we are producing. What we are producing, we are not consuming. We consume what we don't produce, and we buy it expensively. So I think these are kind of reorientation that we need to have, and we suggest to our government there must be a ministry of reorientation that will orient our people back to what should be done. That this is nutritionally benefit for you, either by jingle, either by televisions, either by any media, to tell them that this is what was supposed to be done. And I feel that can change a lot of things after some time.
People have formed taste for foreign food, and you
Yeah.
say carbohydrate is carbohydrate, and we buy even the imported rice, like you put it, very expensive, and sometimes the tax are just changed, whereas these carbohydrate products which are imported are already expired. And the question we want to ask ourselves, Professor, is what can be done to convince Africans to consume what they produce and produce what they consume? This is a $1 million question that we are not able to get an answer to it, because it's inadmissible that you can take much money to buy an expired product when your own product, which is even very affordable, is just by you, but you think that it is an inferior food. What a paradox, like I said. What can be done for Africans to consume what they produce and produce what they consume? In this case, we're talking about cassava production. How can that be done?
And we still have to go back to our policy maker, our government have a lot to still do in this regard. There was a time we had Minister of Agriculture in Nigeria. He's a popular man. He's now the current president of African Development Bank. When he was the minister, he was the one that encouraged that the bakers have to include 10% of cassava flour in their in bread. And what he did was that they now made the bread, the one they included cassava flour, and then so it was well publicized. He ate it publicly on the television. People see him eating the bread. You cannot differentiate that this is one from cassava, this is one from wheat, imported wheat. And the man did that uh, publicly, and it became compulsory that you must include 10% of cassava flour in your bread. But when he left, I was told that that policy has to change when he moved to African Development Bank. So because the man moved, so that policy changed. For example, in Africa, within 11 years, they have 10 ministers of agriculture. Within 11 years, meaning that every year there is a minister for agriculture. And when this one comes, it will come with its own policy. So that policy inconsistency is a big problem. That supposing they were able to implement that policy now, over the year, people will form the taste. They will differ, the taste will change. They will be eating that bread with cassava flour. And the cost of that bread will even be reduced because cassava flour is not imported. There is no import duty on it. So the price of that bread will come down. So over the year, people will develop the taste. But before you know, when there was a change of minister, there was a change of policy, and now I think what they said was that they wanted to reduce it to 5%. But now maybe they are not even using the cassava flour in their bread at all. And then they are complaining that the cost of bread has gone up. So we should be thinking of how to get some of these things across to our policymakers, that these things have to be done, and we hope that along the line some of these things will change.
Africa produces a lot of cassava but exports very little. And we were saying that cassava has the potential to increase farm incomes, reduce rural and urban poverty, and help close the food insecurity gap. How then can stakeholders come into play to make this a reality? To use
And
cassava.
the stakeholders, the farmers, the producers, the processors, the government, there should be a meeting point. And as we have said, number one, the extension link is very weak. There was a time the extension system in Africa was very strong. I was very sure of Nigeria because it was supported by World Bank, where you have extension workers going to the farmers, tell them what to do, how to plant their cassava, how to grow the cassava, sometimes how to even process it. But when World Bank withdrew their support to Nigeria, especially, that was the end of extension system in Nigeria. The thing totally collapsed. So the farmer they don't know what to do, they don't know how to do it, they don't know where to go, and they are confused. And so that is why there must be that connectivity between. There's a lot of research going on cassava, then the farmers are not aware. And then the practices how they are supposed to do it, they don't know how to do it. So that connectivity is not there. And the connectivity will not be there because the government is a public service. Extension service is supposed to be public service, supposed to come from the government. So if the government are not doing their own and there's no extension workers, the farmer will not know what to do. Even the processor, they will not know what to do. There is this thing I was watching the other time that even the cassava waste, Institute for Livestock Research, they are working on the cassava waste. They are the peel. They discovered that the peel can be used to feed livestock, poultry, layers. They perform the experiment. They just gather that because that waste is another problem. Because almost 20% of the waste. Now they gathered it together, they grinded it, and they processed it, and they used it to feed broilers, they used it to feed layers, and they were doing well. Myself, it was in the process of preparing this presentation, I saw it. So this thing can be used. But now the farmers are not aware. They are still throwing the thing away. So that is why there must be that connectivity between the farmers, between the extension workers, and the government have to instigate that. The government have to initiate that. Then the farmers themselves, they can form a kind of cooperative, as you have said, where they can exchange information. They have to come together. This day of scattered, disjointed productive activities is no longer celebrated. So the farmers should form a corporation and then a cooperative. They can come together and then they can share idea. And then some of this information, some of the flyer from some of the discussion like this can even go get across to them one way or the other. So I feel that can help.
Okay, thank you. We are looking at aspiration one, and we're thinking of quality life, of course, and improving the standards of living of citizens. Professor, in your opinion, are you seeing the AU actually implementing much of what it's supposed to do up to this level to see that the aspiration one, the goal of aspiration one, which is a high standard of life, quality of life, and well-being for all citizens? Do you think that the AU is doing quite enough so that by 2063, this aspiration would have been attained, or this goal would have been attained? Can you appreciate what the AU is doing on the ground so far?
And we appreciate them on the basis of the fact that they have aspiration at all. But aspiration is not enough. Aspiration is not enough. Number one, we have to measure the progress we are making every year. Just like we have aspiration one, we say, okay, 2063, because before we know 2063 will come and meet us. But we can say every 2 years, we want to do a kind of peer review mechanism. We want to have a kind of peer review mechanism where, okay, what have we done concerning aspiration one, aspiration two? Then we need to measure that. That is being done for sustainable development goals. We need to do that for this aspiration to how are we moving far or closer to this aspiration. Before you know, this year will come and then nothing will be achieved. So there must be a measurable mechanism that is put in place along that line. Another thing is that each country should be sure that they put the right person in the right place. Square peg in a square hole. So we need to ensure that. I gave the example of Dr. Adesina, Akewumi Adesina. When he was the minister, everybody knew that, yes, there was a lot of changes. I did a research on some of the policies he did, and you see significant improvement. But after he left, everything went back to square one. Even the fertilizer subsidy. He was the one that introduced what they call e-wallet. E-wallet is before you get fertilizer, then you receive a message on your phone, go and collect the fertilizer in so place. Before, it was a big racketeering. Government was wasting a lot of money. The money was not getting to the and then the fertilizer was not getting to the farmer. But when he came on board, he introduced that policy. You don't need to know anybody. You just go and register. Even use the opportunity to collect the data of the farmers. Because before you participate in the program, you have to register. So in the process, you put down your name, the size of your farm, and everything, and you get your fertilizer. But before, it was not. It was middlemen that hijacked the fertilizer, and they were selling back to the farmer expensively. So he was able to break. Nobody knew that that thing can be done in Nigeria, but he was able to do it within that time. So we should measure the aspiration maybe every 2 years. Then we should put the right person in the right place. People that are motivated, people that can do it, not people that are politically selected. And so when we do that, we discover that people will really, there will be a lot of changes along the line. But AU should not just sit down that we have aspiration. Aspiration does not achieve itself. You have to mobilize the aspiration, put the right person in the right role, and there should be a committee of people that will monitor the progress in and review to make sure that we are moving towards that aspiration along the line.
Thank you very much. You see, aspiration alone is not enough. We need a monitoring machinery if we want a sustainable continent,
Yeah.
and that the policies too should be consistent. Changing policymakers every now and then creates so much breakage in the line of development and equally achievements because each person comes in with his own goals. He wants a particular thing to be achieved, and so he may not continue with what his predecessor had already put in place to be achieved because that, of course, is not what he has planned to do. So, aspiration alone is not good. We need a better machinery to be put in place. Professor, we talked of high losses in the production chain of cassava, and I bet with you that that is what is happening because just at our local level here, you want to prepare what you call water fufu. You peel the cassava, the peelings are thrown away. You harvest, the leaves are thrown away. The stems sometimes are just dried and used for fuel. And you see that much is lost. And the amount of energy that you get from the cassava itself, because the starch equally is pressed and discarded off. So much losses along the production chain. What can we do to curb these losses and turn the losses into benefits, of course, to the farmer to curb and to cut down, poverty, to reduce poverty and increase the income of the farmer in question.
I think the direct answer is processing, processing, processing. But I still want to come down to the issue of education. As I told you, we grow a lot of cassava in Nigeria. I grew up among cassava farmers. So I planted cassava myself before, and we intercrop it with maize. But all those years, I didn't know that we can eat cassava leaf as a vegetable. So it was when I was reading, I read that cassava leaves can serve as a vegetable, but that is the end. But when I came to Germany here, I visited a friend from Congo. So they now process, they gave us a meal, and then we had very delicious one. So it was after, maybe if they told me before we start eating, maybe I would not eat the cassava leaf. So but they allowed us to enjoy the meal. So it was later when we had discussed, they say it's cassava leaves and very delicious, very delicious. So that's where the education comes in. So
Yeah.
all this year we have been throwing away our cassava leaves, and I didn't know that
Mhm.
this is vegetable. So likewise, we
Much,
need
yeah.
to start with that. That we need to educate our people that all the part of cassava is very useful. So the next thing is now the processing. There is a company in Nigeria now, and that's another irony. They came from China to be processing cassava in Nigeria to ethanol. I can send the link. They came from China. They came to build the company in Nigeria. So what they are doing on those states now is that they are taking cassava and they are converting it to ethanol. The question is that why do they have to come from China? Why can't we send somebody to go and study how they do it and come and do it in Nigeria? They even did well, because what they could have done is that they can buy our cassava from Nigeria, go and convert it to ethanol in China and export it back to Nigeria to buy. So those, because that should have been what they should have done. So but what they did was that it's a very big company. About 10 trailers of cassava was packed in the company the last time I watched it. My plan is I want to even visit them when I get to Nigeria. But they are producing ethanol, 99.9% ethanol from cassava. And so when they extract the ethanol, there is this flour that is still remain. This flour can still be used for other things. So that's what we are saying, that all this year, why can't Nigeria think that this ethanol can be granted, can be gotten from this cassava? And if it's not profitable, a Chinese man cannot leave China and come to Nigeria and live in Nigeria and set up a business in Nigeria to be producing ethanol for us. When are we going to wake up to some of this reality? And so what China will do, what the Chinese will do is that they will prefer to send a student to go and study that. We have some of them in, I just love them. They are very enterprising. You see them in Germany, yeah. What they do is that they go to different companies, they go to study anything their government want them to study, and they will go back to their country to go and do that. So Africa can do that. We send people go and study this one. Go to Thailand. We'll sponsor you for 4 years. Go and learn that and come and do it here. So people are planning for their future, sustainable development. They are developing their young ones to be able to exploit what they have. So any product we have, we should think of what can be done. I feel that the diasporas in Thailand, they can study what do they do to their own cassava, and they are getting about 8 billion of cassava exportable cassava alone. So we can be thinking about things like that. So likewise, all of us, where we are in different countries, whatever they are doing well, we should be thinking of how can they do it. I told some of the young ones here, why can't we go to chocolate companies and study how they produce chocolate? And then you go back and set up chocolate business over there. So likewise for cassava, not only cassava, for most of the products we have around. I hope that we'll be able to make progress along the line.
Okay. Professor, when you presented, I did not hear any work done as health-wise to see the health benefits of cassava. Was any work or any research going on to see how cassava can, or the health benefits that we can derive from cassava products?
It's just like food. Cassava is not a medicine. It's food, and the food has all the benefits. If you don't have food, then you are using medicine. You want to kill yourself. So it has nutritional benefits. It has supplies of energy. I told you it has calcium, and then low level of vitamins, and those are the vitamins that is being fortified. But the major problem people have against cassava is they say it has cyanide. That's the major. They call it nutritional factors, that it has cyanide, that this and that. But as I've said, when you grind the cassava alone, certain percentage of cyanide gone. By the time you press it, you ferment it, almost all the cyanide is gone. And so that's why people can feed on it and they are fine, they are okay. So it has no direct medicinal property, but it has nutritional benefits.
Okay. We are heading to the end of our program. And this last question before you say your final word, high production of cassava in Africa, but we have the impression that cassava does not feature amongst the cash crops in most of the African countries. Why this relegation of cassava to the background when actually it's so beneficial as a cash crop?
It has to still deal on policy direction. For example, there are some countries, because they said cassava is a food crop, therefore it cannot be exported. There are policy like that. But what we should know is that this cassava is being wasted. In fact, some farmers will not harvest their cassava because there is no market. So why can't we just sit down and say what can be done? I don't believe that you say something cannot be, this one cannot be exported, this one. No, what you have to do is that whatever you are producing, produce it very well, export it. What you need to buy, you can buy it. There's nothing bad in importation, but you have to import the right, make sure you are importing the right thing. Not that you are importing the toothpaste, that you can use the wood. They will carry the wood in Africa, they will go and use it to make the toothpaste in abroad, and then you go and buy, they will export the toothpaste back to us. That's not what we are talking about. But what you have, we do it very well. Anything we produce in excess, we should be able to export it. We should not just say make a policy. So some of our policy has been made since 1962. In fact, some of our policies were made by us by the British colonial masters. Some of those
Yeah.
policies, it has been there.
Okay.
So 1962 policy is what is still driving us now. Why can't we review some of those things, and we'll be able to export and whatever we are producing in excess and process them.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Professor, for this wonderful submission. The program has been so lively, so interactive. You answer all the questions like you knew them beforehand, whereas I am asking as the program is going on, and equally from comments from our spectators, those who are following us. What would be your last word to Sompon Social Service today as we are going on? I know you will be there for quite some a number of weeks. A word of encouragement to the Sompon Social Service for this work that they are doing to promote, to popularize the Agenda 2063, Professor.
Yeah, I think some point is doing well by educating our people on some of these things, and we have to go ahead to make sure that we get these things in a kind of flyer, and then we should work on how to get across to the policymakers, so that this thing will not just end in academic forum, in debate forum. So how do we link up with policymakers? I think this year we should be thinking, all of us should be thinking about that. Because some of these things, some of these things, policymakers, they don't know, they are not aware that this thing can be done. And so we should be thinking of how to get this thing across to policymakers. Then another thing we should do is that, because we have contact with some of the immigrants here, somebody raised the question that, okay, when I said they should send them to go and study how to do this thing, that some of them will not go back to Africa. Africa sent them to Africa sent them to Thailand, go and study how to make starch, cassava product. Then when they get to Thailand, they will not come back. And so that's where this organization is still relevant. What we can do is
Mm.
that we have to educate our people that Africa can be great. So when you are trained here, you have to go back and then go and develop our country. So I think that there are two ways. Number one, we get this information to policymakers. Number two, we need a level of education even in this era to tell our people the right thing. They send you, the government send you to come and study here. After study, get the knowledge and go and develop our people.
Thank you so much, Professor, for that wonderful word. If you're sent out by the government to study, get the knowledge, and come back home. Today, we were talking about cassava production, value chain integration, and fortification of for food security in Africa. And I had with me in studio Professor Ruben Adiolu Alabi, who is a great teacher and has thrilled us wonderfully during this 1 hour of the program, the debate. We will be leaving you now, and we are hoping to get you again with us next week for yet another topic, still on agriculture. We wish that you watch, share, and equally like our channel because we are here because of you and we want to promote the Ubuntu spirit. So thank you so much for being there, and that is how we had it for the debate. Let us use consistent policies train the right people, put the right persons in the right places. Thank you, Professor, and good night. Goodbye for today.
Thank you very much.